Durham MP states CSIS informed him of interference from China. Dan Kearns, The Standard. Durham. MP Aaron O'Toole has reportedly been told by the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS, that China targeted him during his time as the Conservative Party of Canada leader. At a session of Parliament on Tuesday, May 30th, Durham's MP told members he recently received a briefing from CSIS. On Friday, I received a briefing from the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS, which confirmed several matters to me that I will discuss in a few moments, MP O'Toole said. In early May, multiple news outlets reported Wellington Halton Hills MP, Michael Chong, was the target of an intimidation campaign by Chinese officials. In his remarks, Mr. O'Toole explained his circumstances were a bit different. As I alluded to a moment ago, the facts of the People's Republic of China's campaign against me are separate and distinct from those which led to the Speaker's important ruling regarding the intimidation campaign orchestrated against the Honourable Member for Wellington Halton Hills. In that case, the Globe and Mail newspaper reported on intelligence leaks which indicated an accredited Chinese diplomat was involved in the targeting of this Honourable Member and his family, he stated. The facts of my case are distinct, as they relate to an ongoing campaign of foreign interference to target me as both a member of this chamber and leader of the official opposition. Given my respect for the men and women who work for CSIS and the Canadian security establishment, I will not provide the specific details from my intelligence briefing on the numerous threats identified to me, as I do not want any details to reveal sources or methods of collection. Explaining how China's work impacted him, Mr. O'Toole said, "The country intended to discredit me, to promote false narratives about my policies, and to severely obstruct my work as a Member of Parliament and as leader of the official opposition." Mr. O'Toole pointed out, intelligence indicated an active campaign of voter suppression against me, the Conservative Party of Canada, and a candidate in one electoral district during the 2021 general election. He also noted he feels he was hampered by foreign-controlled social media platforms. The briefing from CSIS confirmed to me what I had suspected for quite some time, that my parliamentary caucus and myself were the targets of a sophisticated misinformation and voter suppression campaign orchestrated by the People's Republic of China before and during the 2021 general election, he added. Lindsay Mall fire damage estimates pegged at $200,000. Dan Kearns, The Standard. Kawartha Lakes. A fire at the Lindsay Square Mall on Tuesday, May 30th caused an estimated $200,000 in damages. Kawartha Lakes firefighters were called to the scene in the early afternoon around 1 p.m. The fire was contained to the exterior of the building and started in a construction dumpster, read an email from Kawartha Lakes Fire Chief Terry Jones. Chief Jones said the fire response involved firefighters from 3 stations, and crews were on scene for 2 hours. The mall was evacuated and was closed for the remainder of the day. The majority of the mall reopened on Wednesday, May 31st. However, one store incurred water damage, and the fire chief stated he expected that store would remain closed until cleanup has been completed. The damaged store was your dollar store with more. Port Perry Prince Albert United Church congregations to amalgamate. Dan Kearns, The Standard. Scugog. The congregation of the Prince Albert United Church will be worshipping in their local church for the final time this month. Late last year, both United Church congregations in Port Perry and Prince Albert created an amalgamation agreement. Both congregations voted on this agreement at their respective annual meetings, and now our church's regional council has given us permission to go ahead with our amalgamation plans. As of July 1, 2023, our pastoral charge will no longer be made up of 2 congregations, but will come together as one. It has been decided our newly amalgamated congregation will worship at Port Perry United Church, read a United Church newsletter from April 2023. A document provided by Don Wilmer, representing the 2 United Churches, explained an aging and shrinking membership meant it was becoming a challenge for the congregation to cover its operating expenses. "This is a sad time," Reverend Elaine Hall said in a statement, "but it is also a special time for honoring an important legacy and for caring for one another." Reverend Wilmer had a positive outlook on the situation in his statement. As we become one congregation in July, I know each congregation's history will be honored, and the people will support one another and come together as followers of Jesus, ready to continue to serve their community. Reverend Wilmer also reported the church's regional council has given the congregation approval to sell the Prince Albert Church property. Although nothing has been settled yet, it's the congregation's hope the church which has served us so long and so well will continue to be used as a place of worship, he wrote. The document, Mr. Wilmer provided the Standard, also provided some background on the church's history. The church, formerly Prince Albert Wesleyan Methodist Church, traces its roots back to at least 1845, at which time it was part of the Whitby Wesleyan Methodist Circuit, served by a circuit-riding preacher who would travel to the various points on the circuit on horseback, leading local worship in people's homes or barns. Eventually, a Wesleyan Methodist church was built in the village of Prince Albert and dedicated on February 8, 1852. That church building was lengthened from 50 to 66 feet and reopened in December 1857. The land on which the current brick building is situated was purchased for $100, and the church was built in 1866 at a cost of $3,627. The sanctuary was dedicated on September 30, 1866. The church was later renamed Prince Albert United Church when the United Church of Canada was formed, which combined Congregationalist, Methodist, and consenting Presbyterian churches across Canada. Prince Albert United Church celebrated its 150th anniversary in 2016. A joint service will be held at the Prince Albert United Church on Sunday, June 11th at 11 a.m.
A good story to help the future. Generations, multiple generations, they're so important to the continuity of human existence, of community, of family, and of one's personal identity. This holds for now as much as it did in the past. Tribe starts with blood, not associations of our own making. The weakness of family bonds today has engendered the migration of young people to move quickly to find tribe outside the family before they have learned the hard work of yielding. This is the understanding of when a battle is worth the fight, the ability to embrace what others need, not just demand, and to grow in the capacity to know the difference. And it all starts with the inner workings of family. This goes for immediate family and then through to the extended family, grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, and such. The capacity to work out differences and come to real commitment to each other is vital to human balance in the community and specifically in the psychology of the single human being. Every person finds within themselves conflicting thoughts, desires, and ambitions. The ability to harmonize our different inner attitudes enables stable relationships externally, as it demonstrates a learned pattern of coming to understand what is important and what is not. I had a conversation with a gentleman the other day. It can serve as an example. As a long-standing friend, and as I am a personal counselor, he asked for my advice about how to approach some friction with his wife, which had been brewing. Just a note, I'm swapping out the actual issue for one of similar concept to protect their identities, but it seems they've been dealing with things of this type for a long time. His wife comes from overseas. As she is from a very large family, she was used to always maintaining a pot of leftover stew on the stove. Otherwise, feeding so many mouths would cause a considerable drain on resources. This leftover stew was not the remains of last night's stew. Instead, it was a pot into which went the remains of many meals she would deem reasonably compatible. This pot remained on the stovetop to be continually added to. So, from one vantage point, this appeared wise, as she reasoned this would ensure other leftovers wouldn't go bad. The problem was, the resulting hodgepodge was often unpalatable. Still, not wishing to hurt her feelings, he endured the succession of meals with the best smile he could. You see, pot was rarely washed out. It just kept growing new meals from mystery meat and vegetables ready to fall apart at the slightest stirring in his bowl. Inner conflict much? His love for his wife trumped his need for healthy food. The culture she had come from was not one which used refrigeration very much, as they used spices to preserve and protect food more. So she was accustomed to using everything up quickly. What resulted was a pot which needed to be regularly dumped because they could not eat the food fast enough. Believe me, he tried. He has gained significant weight over the years. His frustration was legit, but his complaints about having to eat stews and soups so often weren't getting him anywhere, Instead, she responded with how her family thrived because of doing this as she grew up. What she hadn't realized was, as a couple, they had no big family, and she now lived in a country where refrigeration and freezers made it practical to save food another way. So a bit of pot roast, sausages, or leftover turkey, spruced up with some fresh vegetables, could offer variety at a later time. Consequently, her impulse to save money and the idea of conserving food has led to food waste and greater overall food expenses. The conflict in her desires was creating dissatisfaction in her and outwardly for him. I pointed out his need to approach this from the perspective of how she is at odds with herself. He could ask her, compassionately, if she was doing this to save food and be responsible financially. If she responded it was the case, he needed to communicate how good an idea that was. This would set up an avenue to share an alternative way of achieving her goal through refrigeration. Without this inner conflict, she gets her real goal, he gets a nicer, safer meal variety, and they both move on to the same page. I haven't heard back yet as to how things went, but I'm sure the effort at empathy will go a long way. This is a story, one about resolution and an effort to understand. It's good, it teaches, and helps to grow the inner life. Stories passed along of days gone by, of challenges overcome, of understanding, and so growth achieved and goals attained is the nature of relationships, healthy ones, and they are the nature of families, spontaneously growing the inner person, and so the culture and community. But there is an enemy in our midst. It's cancel culture, and it strives to recontextualize the errors and successes of the past, of our stories, to encourage. The agenda is to falsely educate through skewed statistics and spin, to enlist the naivete and energy of those who don't register history is a mixed bag. There is no our side and their side. There is only we are all in this stew together. If we don't realize this clearly, we will continue to be the puppet agents of the malevolent entities of hatred, fear, and the most childish, revenge, disguising itself as defense. Sometimes it appears with butterflies and flowers as entitlement, but enters in to drum up the wounds of the past. Then the generations of today have to live in it, not because they should, but because others want that purpose to tout. This persistence of a few who fancy themselves as having purpose, and those who have no inner concept, are slowly wounding again the hearts of those who have nobly battled away embitterment. These warriors of the soul have done the work and cast off resentment to heal their people by starting in their own inner life. Then the stories told may focus on better things out of the past and feed the present and future with good, not grudge. This is necessary for any new wound as well. Don't let them get your inner person. Keep offering it to life instead. This is a faithful victory, an inner victory, one considered for the 7 generations forward. This establishes the discipline of fought-for forgiveness and peaceful collaboration with others who may be different than themselves. It maintains the best of the people they come from by considering the condition of their own heart. It is not a kind which seeks to master past atrocities by attacking them, but one which views the actions of the past as extensions of the wounded spiritual condition of all humanity, which shows itself in the physical world, regardless of what side of a perceived line harm has come from. Acts 17, verse 35 to 28a shares, "The God who made the world and all things in it, since he is the Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in temples made with hands, nor is served with men's hands, as though he had needed anything, since he gives life and breath and all things to all. And he has made all nations of men of one blood to dwell on all the face of the earth, ordaining foreappointed seasons and boundaries of their dwelling to seek the Lord, if perhaps they might feel after him and find him, though indeed he is not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being." That's from the modern King James Version. So, our people are all people, and we're in it together. That's a good story.
Welcome to You've Got to Be Kidding, a podcast that offers a different perspective of life around us. Listen now to author Jonathan Van Bilsen.
Going through life offers many opportunities to check boxes on your bucket list. I've inched my way along the edge walk at the CN Tower, spent time in a flight simulator, and last week I had an opportunity which was very educational and extremely interesting. I was invited to spend a day at Queen's Park. Now let me be clear, this was not a political event promoting any specific party, only an opportunity to see how our government functions. The day started with a drive to Queen's Park, and after a security check, being ushered by a page to the members' gallery in the Legislative Assembly. I may have been in this room on a school trip many years ago, but have no recollection of that previous visit. It was a new experience. The chamber is beautiful with ornate wood carvings everywhere. The entire building is steeped in history and is a beautiful piece of architecture. The Ontario Legislative Building is surrounded by Queen's Park and sits on a part of South Wellesley Street, the former site of King's College, later the University of Toronto. It was leased from the university by the Municipal Government of Toronto in 1859 for a payment of a mere $1 a year on a 999-year term. The southern portion of the site was later given to the provincial government. The building is constructed of 10.5 million bricks, each of which was made by inmates of the Central Prison. They have a pinkish tint and were mined from the Credit River Valley near Orangeville, Ontario. The first few hours were taken up by question period. The opposition, led by Merritt Stiles, asked questions of the Conservative government. The issues addressed were thought-provoking and several points raised sounded quite worthwhile. It was interesting to see ministers and the Premier answering and defending questions. Upon completion of question period, I was ushered by a page to a vestibule and had an opportunity to meet and chat with the Premier of Ontario. No matter what your political views are, the experience was humbling. I was given an in-depth tour of the building, intrigued by paintings of former premiers on the walls. I also saw the walls where the name of every member of Parliament is carved into the stone. Part of the building was ruined by fire in 1909 and reconstructed a few years later. It made me think of the tragic fire at Windsor Castle a few years ago and the devastation of losing priceless and non-replaceable artifacts. I enjoyed a very tasty lunch in the parliamentary dining room and had an opportunity to reflect on the fantastic history that made our country great. If you have a day this summer with nothing to do, consider a visit to the Legislative Assembly at Queen's Park. It's easy to imagine the great historic significance of the building as you stroll through the halls that shaped our lives. I'm Jonathan Van Bilsen, and this is You've Got to Be Kidding.
You've Got to Be Kidding was presented by X4 Media with permission from the Standard Media Group. We endeavor to make all information contained in this program as accurate as possible at production time. X4 Media and the Standard Media Group are not responsible for any liabilities resulting from information contained in this program. For more information, please visit x4media.ca.
The Standard Podcast was produced by Greenstream Studio for the Standard newspaper.